Okay, it is. Yes. Perfect. Perfect. We are live. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Laughter for All podcast with Comedian Nazareth. I want to thank the coronavirus for allowing us to have our next guest because he is one of the busiest men I know, and he is one of the realest Christian men we can talk to. So it's awesome to have him here on the show. Stephen Arterburn is the founder and chairman of New Life Ministries, host of the number one nationally syndicated Christian counseling talk show, New Life Live. He is heard and watched by over 2 million people each week on nearly 200 radio stations nationwide on XM and Sirius Satellite Radio and NRB TV. Steve is also the host of New Life TV, a web based video channel dedicated to transforming lives through God's truth. Steve is the founder of the Women of Faith Conference, attended by over 5 million people. He's a best-selling author of books such as Every Man's Battle, Healing is a Choice, The 7-Minute Marriage Solution, The Book of Life Recovery, Is This the One, Take Your Life Back, and he also written the Life Recovery Workbook series on divorce, sexual integrity, grief, and eating disorders, as well as editing and produce the Restoration Bible. He is an amazing man. I don't know. Steve, thank you. Can I call you Steve?
Well, yeah, sure. Just call me.
Okay, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're busy. I know you're Indian. You're a teaching pastor. You're an author. You have this show which we use every time we go pick up Tally from school. We listen to you on the radio, and now that she's doing homeschooling, we've been missing that. But you've touched and helped so many lives. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. I still remember your story. As I said, we did a conference 20 years ago, and you just I mean I finished the comedy, people just laughed so hard, and then you came in and you kept them laughing harder, and then you got them on the edge of their seat, and you really help people, and you're real, you talk about real issues. Lila, your book, Every Man's Battle, is really helped millions of men. So thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, and thanks, 20 years ago for being my Ed McMahon. I mean, you warmed them up, and here I came in, and it was easy once you got them going. So, yeah.
So you know what? I my first question to you: are you a clinical psychologist? Are you what is your title as a
No,
like? Well, you went to Baylor. I know that.
there's confusion about me being a clinical psychologist. No, I need a clinical psychologist, not one. But that's where the confusion comes in. No, I studied counseling at seminary. I was actually kind of the dean's pet student because I was a guest columnist for the Fort Worth Star Telegram. And so
Oh,
he would see these articles and stuff. But then I ended up finishing my degree in education, which specialized in counseling. I wanted to be like a dean at a college or something like that. But I've never practiced counseling or been licensed, but it's just always been part of what I've done, more from the 12-step self-help kind of perspective than clinical psychology.
now you're married to Misty.
Yeah,
How long you guys been married?
15 years.
15 years. And I know I hear you every day on New Life Live, and you're helping marriages, and you're kind of figuring out why husbands and wife do that. When you argue with Misty, when you fight, do you always win the argument?
No, but there's a reason that I don't win. And I tell her this. I say, look, you're going to win the argument because your IQ is higher than mine. And so you're able to win. But it doesn't mean you're going to be right. It just means you're going to win the argument. And she's very bright. She has an extremely high IQ. And then when we got married, we became a blended family, and her two boys, very bright. And then we've had two kids together, and they're also very bright. So, she's a writer like me. And in fact, both of us, we're involved in three Bible projects that we're editing right now. So yeah, it's nice to be connected to somebody that, well, she's been in her own recovery for 20 years, going to Al-Anon and dealing with codependency and stuff. from her previous marriage where there was, really a big unfaithfulness, betrayal kind of thing there. So.
Oh, that there's something I always said, because you with New Life, you bring people, high caliber people with you, like Henry Cloud and
John Town.
John Townsend.
Mhm.
Yes, and by the way, John Townsend, I was doing a conference in Newport Beach at a high end resort, and I think he was one of the speakers too, and he came to me after we're talking. He goes, "I wrote a book called Boundaries," and I go, "I'm from the Middle East. In my country, we call them checkpoints." And he didn't laugh. And I said, "You know what? Steve Arterburn would have laughed at this." And he didn't think that was funny either. But I would love to pay to see Kyle Kalma, who's a friend of mine, who's married to Dr. Sherry Kiefer.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, two psychologists fighting in marriage. What do you? Is it true that most arguments between couples happens when someone is hungry? Is that true when you're hungry, or when you come home and you're hungry, there's more fights happen that way? Is that true?
I don't think so. I think more it's when one person would like to have sex and the other would. I think that's probably the basis for every argument that I know of. But you're wrong.
But
I don't
not
know.
but not hunger, because I always have a Snickers bar to throw to my wife.
Yeah.
Uh, okay, I have a lot of comedians on my show. I do a show every night called Laugh with Naz on Facebook. I have a lot of comedians, and the question is always like, how do you balance between, comedians are very insecure, so there's that feeling of inadequacy, and then which kind of reflects or backfires in pride.
Yeah.
That What is your take as someone in psychology or someone who gives advice and counseling? What is that? How can we know, are we being insecure, are we being proud? How do we balance that as comedians?
Well, first of all, I think anybody that becomes a comedian is signing up for one of the most difficult, painful, and literally could be most unfulfilling jobs ever, because you most likely are not going to be hilarious all the time, and you're going to feel that. Let's say on a scale of 1 to 100, when you're not hilarious, I think most comedians feel it at a level 100, minus 100.
Right.
Then when you are hilarious, you feel that on a scale of 1 to 100, not a positive 100, but a positive 20. Just like, and so you're always kind of at a deficit, and you really have to be willing to suffer to be a comedian. It is not easy. And so whatever you have to do to do it, I think you just have to do it. And if you can see it as a calling of God to go in front of people and risk literally looking like an idiot. When a person goes in for surgery, they don't, under anesthesia especially, they don't say to the surgeon, "Okay, prove to me you can do this surgery." You've already settled that. Comedian
Right.
walks up there on the stage, everybody is kind of predisposed to, this isn't going to work for me. This might be funny for them, but not for me. And so you really have a tough battle. But the cool thing about a great comedian is that it's a bonding experience when people laugh. If I tell a moving story that is sad, some people are going to cry. Some people are going to think it's sad, and some will roll their eyes, go, "Oh, brother, I hope he got the reaction he was looking for telling that story." But if I can say something really funny, and I can and literally make you laugh and everybody else, it's a bonding experience. We're all agreeing on something together that we were kind of predisposed not to agree on. And so it's an amazing thing that can bring people together when you're able to do it well. But it's a risky and a painful painful career, and I applaud you for what you do.
Well, thank you. 30 years of that. I have one of my fans. She sent this. They knew I was going to talk to you. She goes, she struggles. She's a female. She struggles with pornography and depression.
Yeah. Well, my wife does a support group every week for women who have a problem with sexual integrity. And many of those women are, they have a pornography problem. And so now all of her groups are online versus face to face. But look, it's pretty simple that the only reason you'd be involved in something like pornography is that you're treating your depression with something that can alter your mood. So you get the depression treated, and you probably will have less of a need or desire for pornography. And if it hasn't become an addiction, then it will just kind of fade into the background. But if it doesn't, then you've literally become so dependent that you could call it a full addiction. And you need to get into some kind of recovery for it. But man, depression is a treatable condition, and whether it's medication or exercise, diet, supplements, or a combination of all those, and getting the right kind of counseling. If I was talking to her, first question I'd say is, okay, so you're depressed. So what are you afraid of? So you start dealing with the fears that get transmutated into depression. Or what is it that you're so ashamed of in your past, or the trauma that's still traumatizing you today? You can deal with those things with another human being. You're not just going to one day wake up and not be depressed anymore.
Now, you hear this a lot, and I could be also, guilty of that sometimes. When people say I'm anxious and I'm depressed, I go spend time in the Word of God, just sit before the Lord and read the Bible, and that will be gone. And I don't know. What are your take on that?
Well, those are nice ideas, but Jeremiah, who Jerry, as I call him, we were close,
Yeah.
a couple thousand years ago or more, he said this, Jeremiah 6:14. He said this: they treat the mortal wounds of my people with superficial treatments, and they don't even blush at what they do.
Mm.
So the danger is giving someone the idea that you don't have a real condition. You don't have a treatable condition. All you got to do is some kind of spiritual thing, and it's going to fix it. I believe that if that were the case, they would have fixed it on their own a long time ago. So I'm really big on read the Bible, study the Bible, pray. But when a person has a clinical depression, I would just say it's a little bit superficial for how much pain and how serious that problem is.
How do you know when someone goes from anxiety to depression? What is that? What is the signs for someone with your experience?
Doesn't really matter. The issue is, do I have a problem or not?
Mm.
Whether it's anxiety or depression, what am I doing about whatever I'm experiencing? Because, depression can mask itself in the form of anxiety, and vice versa. So, like people will talk about alcohol. Well, am I really an alcoholic or an addict, whatever? I don't care. Do you have a problem with alcohol? Go get help for that problem. Let's just call it a problem. We don't have to name it, we don't have to nail it, but let's get help for the problem. And then we might discover along the way the problem we thought we had is actually not the problem we've got.
Okay, for example, I know a person who's young, and what they're doing is they used to have symptoms, where they, maybe sometimes having uh, anxiety attacks, but other times were just have sweaty feet, or they're nervous and their heart palpitation. Then they go on Lexapro, which is a medication for that, and now they're fine, but they want to stay up all night, and then they want to sleep the whole day, and and you hear them jokingly, even though they're very healthy, jokingly, "Oh, I want to kill myself. I hate myself." How? Is that a sign, and a warning alarm?
Well, yeah. I mean, think. I just can't imagine a person that hates themselves not wanting to get help for hating themselves, whatever it is that you have. Um, you know, what is the source of that? Is that a parent? Is it a decision you made that you can't forgive yourself for? But self-hatred, that in and of itself is something that you ought to be talking to someone about. And the person you're talking to, the more people they've talked to with that particular problem, of course, the better it is for you. So, man, don't go through life um, not dealing with, I hate myself. Go get some counseling. My wife and I go to counseling every week.
Hmm.
Now, people say, well, that's weird. No, it's
Hmm.
not. We believe in counseling. And when it quits helping us, we commit that we will stop going. But we've been going to counseling for 15 years.
So some Christians say, "Oh, you should never go to a mainstream counselor or a non-Christian counselor." What are your take on that?
That you should never go to a non-Christian counselor.
Right.
Well, there would be non-Christian counselors that you should never go to.
Mm.
But if you were living in Nome, Alaska, and there was a person there that was a counselor, not a Christian, but they also weren't negative about Christians, then you could get uh, some good help from them. Wouldn't be able to address everything that you have to deal with, but if maybe you're the church you go to is so small you can never open up to anybody or everybody's going to know about it, be better to go get counseling from the non-Christian that you can open up to than to not share with anybody at all.
I know on your website, and we used it before. We looked for counselors, and you can find counselors within your zip code. So that was very helpful. Uh, Now, your book, Every Man's Battle, I mean, talks about pornography. It deals with that. What do you tell people in there? Like, if you're raising boys and, in a Christian home, and they're like 18, 19, 20, or even before 16, 17, how do you ask them to stay pure and in a world where there's a lot? I mean, in our days, you have to go and find some pornography to look at. You have to now it's in their face everywhere, in Instagram, all these pictures, all this sexual stuff. And how do kids or teenagers get to relief without while staying pure? Or what are your take on that? Because my friend is Mark Gungar, and he goes, no, no, you don't touch yourself, you don't do that, you don't do anything, you just get your mind off it. And but there's other people. I want your take as one of the authoritative people who wrote the book on that.
Yeah, well, first of all, if you're starting at age 16 to ask your kids to stay pure, you're way late. You need to start at least 10 years younger than that.
Mm.
And I didn't write these books, but there's a set of books that are really good. And they start with, for like 4 to 6 year olds, and it's called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures.
Mm.
You sit down with your child and it explains about good pictures and bad pictures. And good pictures, people are covered up the same way they are when they're at the swimming pool or at the beach. And bad pictures, something else, and it tells them about that and that they should know that isn't right for someone to show that to them, and they need to tell an adult about it. And Joe, so there is the beginning, and then you're talking about honoring the whole person, and then we start moving into talking about objectification of people and personification, depersonalizing people. So it's a process that should last a lifetime. You don't have to talk about it every week, every month, but the other thing is everybody needs to know that whenever anything inappropriate is found on a phone, an iPad, a computer, that device will go away for a very, very long time. And so you provide them with a consequence so severe that they want to say no to it. And when they're with their friends, for instance, you want to have a consequence so horrible that they can use that with their friends to say, I just got to tell you, I'd love to do that, but I'm not going to look at that, or I'm not going to take that drug or whatever, because here's the price I have to pay when my parents find out, and they find out everything eventually.
But what do you tell a young man who's really single, not touching anybody? It's like, how do you tell him to keep themselves pure at that point if you missed all that?
Well, for one, you can't do that alone. And I answer this question all the time. So you'd have to find another buddy who wanted to stay pure also. And you would encourage each other, and you'd do it together. And you don't have to have sex with yourself. Your body takes care of it physiologically if you don't. But also, when you hear things like, oh, well, I need to have some kind of relief or whatever, well, does that really do that, or does it kind of stir it up more than before? So it's not easy, but it's also not easy whenever you become so into it and you're using images of other women and lusting after other people. There are consequences that are extremely, well, without help, impossible to get over, and you don't even understand what they are till you get married. And then, of course, before you get married, you tell yourself that once you're married, it's all going to be okay. And then when you are married, you realize marriage doesn't help it. In fact, it actually makes it worse, much worse.
Right. In one of your books or seminars, you were talking about, let's see, Betsy the stripper. And you said, how can you, I know one of the things that was very helpful early on to me is like as a Christian, when I became a believer, is when I look at a woman and say, like those girls in like strippers or something, you go, this is somebody's daughter. This is somebody's daughter. And then you have daughters and you have kids and you start, that becomes excellent help. But Betsy, you mentioned one story, Betsy the stripper, who the church bought a strip club, bought internet.
Well, what happened was this guy was his dad owned the building, and his dad died. And when he died, the son said to his other brothers, I want to buy this thing out from you guys because I don't want us to extend the lease to the strip club that was in the dad's building. And so he brought in a church that when the lease was up, the church would take it over. And the church goes in and, they come in with their money and they're going to help the strippers and all. And, their whole budget wasn't even going to be enough for this one woman. And so the church decided just to take her on and really help her. And she ended up getting a degree from Colorado Christian University and ending up being a minister in the church where she used to strip.
Amen. So she, you have to take that decision. You have to help yourself in these issues, that's pornography and others, to seek help and do that.
Yeah.
Now, what makes Stephen Arterburn laugh? What makes you laugh?
Well, I love, I love really great humor, and it's kind of rare that you ever see it, but there's some great clean comedians that we love to hear their routines. You make me laugh. Of course, it's got to be smart and kind of a little on the edge, to be really funny. But yeah, I love I when I was growing up, I lived in Texas. Now, the reason that's significant is that Johnny Carson would come on at 10:30 rather than 11:30 on Central Time. And so I would, as anytime I could, I would stay up and watch Johnny Carson's monologue. And that's where I learned timing and learning that it's not the joke sometimes, but it's what you do when the joke fails that makes it better. So, anybody that stands up and does a great job, I love it. I think it's one. And when I was in college, one of the guys right down the dorm from me was Dennis Swanberg.
Oh, yeah, I know
And
Dennis.
so Dennis and we gave each other a run for our money and impersonations and just being funny. And then, of course, he made that his life, just like you did.
And your timing is great. I hear you on New Life Live, and sometimes, you have this beautiful, funny remark. How do you deal with life when every day people are calling you and laying their problems on you? I mean, you're not hearing someone calling you and say, hey, Steve, I'm doing great. I love it. Thank you. Bye. No, they're like, oh, my husband or my wife and this and my problem. How do you, when you're done with this, how do you come home and still be able to laugh or to
Yeah.
be up?
Well, the ministry is so fulfilling because we do get to help so many people, and we stay in touch with them, and many of them become our supporters, and some on our board, they go on trips with us. And so we get to see over time the results. But there are times when it is really hard. Some of the days on radio, the things that I hear, and we're not really able to help them very much. It is difficult. And so you just have to maintain perspective and detach yourself and realize, you did the best you could, but it's not easy all the time.
Have you ever had like, you think of a joke or like you want to say like you're messed up, man, but you just hold your tongue. You have to.
I
I
have,
feel you sometimes you do that. Like, I better not say that.
well,
Yeah.
John and Henry and I were doing the show one day when a woman called and said, hi, my husband shot me in the head.
Oops, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
That's not funny.
well, we couldn't do that, but we wanted to do that. And John and Henry just went to the floor and crawled out of the studio, leaving me there by myself. And she wanted to know if she should, set a boundary with him over this or not. And of course, I mean, it was just a really one of those horrible things. But how do you not laugh at the shock of someone being shot in the head and they're calling you to talk about it? It was
Well,
really.
speaking of that, I know I was born in the Holy Land in Israel, and I grew up in Kuwait. I was raised in a Middle Eastern culture. And the last 11 years, I run a nonprofit ministry to refugees and, from Iraq, Syria, Egypt. And our biggest challenge is the men beating up their wives and the wives thinking it's okay because that's a culture. And that's one of our biggest struggles with dealing with these refugees is like, to tell the wife that it's not acceptable to do that. It's not. So what do you deal with people from international different backgrounds, different religions? What do you say to them?
Well, it still happens here where you will hear a woman justify being mistreated because that's just his culture. And
Mm.
Christianity should be able to wipe out the negative impact of a culture. And if your Christ following or your own personal Christianity doesn't do that, then you got a problem. So we just never want to let somebody excuse abuse because it's a cultural thing. It's tragic, the way women are treated. And that's one of the things that people might accuse Christianity of being oppressive, but really it liberates women in cultures that are really quite oppressive.
So let me throw a scenario of someone that I know. The husband is well loved by the church. Everybody thinks that guy's great, but he's actually narcissistic.
Yeah.
So his whole house is about him, his kids is about his satisfaction. His wife has to have sex every time he wants, several times a day. He wanted to, and after a few years, the wife goes, wait a minute, this is not healthy. This is not normal. So she stood her ground and said, I'm not going to take this. And the guy wouldn't want to help, but she's going, for the sake of my kids, I'm going to stay in the house. Now she's a lot stronger as a person, but he still haven't changed. He's not physically abusive, but language and just putting her down still and all that. What do you think? How do you encourage a woman like that and she still have young kids to hang on
Well,
until
yeah, I would say to your wife, Nazareth, because
that?
obviously this,
How did you know?
yeah, there's hope here still. No, it's not a matter. It's not a matter of do I hang on. It's a matter of how do I respond to what happens.
Mm.
It's not just okay. I'm going to stay in this or leave, but no. Let's go get some help for me. First of all, how did I choose this? Let's start there. How was I attracted to this person who's this way? Okay, now that I've got some insight into how I was attracted, why did I stay in this and allow it for so long? One of my favorite stories is a woman that gets married, and they go on the honeymoon, and he pulls out a marijuana cigarette, he rolls it, and starts to smoke a joint. Mm-hmm. She says to him, wait a second. You never smoked pot while we were dating. Mm. And now that we're married, I see you're smoking pot. And he says, yeah, I just do it to relax. She said, you never told me that pot was part of the deal. So here's my deal. You take that and you flush it down the toilet and you commit to me that you will never, ever smoke pot again. Or I'm going to leave now and I'm going to tell all of your friends that you were such a disappointment on the honeymoon. You couldn't even satisfy me for one night. You were so bad, I had to get out of being in a couple with you before it was too late. And I'm moving for annulment. Well, of course, he throws it down the toilet and he never used it again because she had zero tolerance. And so, thinking I'm going to love this person to change or whatever, it doesn't ever work. So we have to say, okay, why didn't I respond the first time I was abused with something like that? And now what can I do? Let's go get some help. Let's get some support. Let's learn about codependency. Let's learn how I kind of trained him that this was okay in the beginning because I let it happen. All sorts of things we can do other than just let myself be abused up until the point where I can't take it anymore and I finally say, okay, I'm done.
So what if the husband does not, because as a narcissist, he thinks he's perfect. He doesn't need any help. So she should get help for herself.
Right. And then, one or two things is going to happen. Either he's going to want to figure out what's going on with her and go to the counseling with her, or, she's going to come face to face with the fact that he never wanted a relationship anyway. And when she starts to be a real, live, full human being, and he rejects that and shuts that down, then she knows what she's dealing with.
Oh, okay.
And it isn't as if, a lot of times guys will go and do stuff and be a certain way until somebody says, no, I'm going to get a legal separation. I won't divorce you, but I'm going to protect myself legally, and all sorts of things that happen. But when you just are passive in the face of something like that, you cease to exist in the mind of that narcissist. And, to them, you're kind of like a wet cat on the sofa. It's just, you're annoying, not really a full human being. That's what you
Right.
want to get away from.
That's true. Now with this whole quarantine things, you hear stories and of people because they're together all the time. There's that challenges, their fights, their arguments. You wrote the book 7 Minute Marriage Solution, the 7 Minute Marriage Solution. What do you say to couples right now? She's going, I can't stand them anymore, or I can't stand her anymore. What do you say to them?
Well, you have to, help them see that pretty common that people reach that point, and then you have to challenge them to go beyond believing that this person is worthy of their hate, and see if they could work together on it. There's a great quote out of the big book of AA that says, acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. Now,
Mm.
I might need to accept responsibility, that if anything's going to change, I'm the one that's going to make it change. Or I need to accept this person that I reject because this is so much more about my problem than it is about their behavior or their attitude. So we got to be responsible and realize that the person I'm talking to may be a representation of the father that abused me that I'm not talking to. And all sorts of things, that mysterious things about the relationship that I need to figure out. Is it their problem, or is it fully my problem that causes me to not be able to tolerate this person?
Now, has ever, you speak a lot. You're also an international speaker. You speak anything. What's the most embarrassing thing that happened to you as a speaker, or as a, when any
Oh,
stories
well,
you remember?
well, part of, in my early speaking, um, I like to make people laugh. And early on, I would do a routine kind of thing before I would get down to the subject. I would be my own Ed McMahon and
Uh-huh.
warm people up. And then well, my buddy Jim Burns and I were speaking together, and he spoke before me, and I didn't get there till later. And he told them, when Steve comes, he loves to make people laugh. When he starts up, don't laugh at anything.
Oh,
And
oh.
it it was really embarrassing, and it was kind of cruel too. It was. I don't think he realized that, but yeah, that was the most embarrassing speaking time ever.
Have you pranked anybody before, like Cloud or anything, or
Not
Townsend
like
and
that.
all? No,
No,
no, no, no.
because you get one shot, um, at something like that, and there's sometimes that I will play games with folks, like at Women of Faith, um, when before a conference, we would pray that women would be helped, and we saw over 500,000 women come to Christ. But sometimes the challenge would go out, that anybody that can't work the word ferret into their talk owes everybody. So that we would do fun things like that, but I never messed with anybody's speaking. It is very sacred to me, and you just get really one chance to do it right, to do it well.
Now people don't know that you're the one who started and founded Women of Faith,
Yeah.
and after you made it huge, you probably handed it to someone else, or you moved
Well,
to New
the
Life Live.
New Life, in 1988. we were literally a venture capital funded company.
Mm.
Some people out of Menlo Park gave me a couple of $1 million to start a psychiatric treatment company that was a Christian, that had Christian programming. Well, it became so successful that, they were venture capitalists. I knew this when I took their money, that one day they would want to sell whatever happened if it went well. And
Mm.
so they sold Women of Faith to Thomas Nelson. It
I
wasn't
see.
my decision, um,
Uh,
but yeah, so that was just all part of it. And then we spun off New Life into a 501c3, not for profit, which is our radio program. And then we do these intensives where you don't just hear somebody speak, but you hear a speaker and then you go into a group therapy session
mm.
after each session. And, like Finding Freedom and Every Man's Battle. And that's really been so rewarding to get to do that.
That's awesome. One of the two hardest questions I want to ask you. The first one is that weed behind you on the grass. Is that legal in Indiana?
It is because, when I saw this in my studio the first time, I, I said to my assistant, I said, "How do you take care of that?" And she said, "You dust it." I thought it was real grass. And it looked so real. Hey, wow, how do you? Yeah, you dust it. So
Oh,
anyway, yeah, it's very much like my personality. It's all fake, and yeah, it's just not even good. But I did, what I did this weekend? I planted two
what?
trees, two bushes, and made my wife an above the ground garden. It was quite an amazing experience to work in the yard and
When
discover I really am as old as I am.
when do you have time? You have a church of 13 campuses. You're
Well,
the
it's not
teaching
my church.
pastor.
I'm just a teaching guy.
Oh, so you just prepare the message, but you still teach on Saturday and Sunday, right?
Well, not every one, but
Oh, not.
there's a huge. It's the third fastest growing church in America, not because of me, but because of the senior pastor and the amazing team that's there. I just get to be a small part of it.
And
And
you
then
teach
my
at
wife and I
Saddleback
what's
and
that?
others. You teach at Saddleback sometimes when Rick is not
Yeah.
there, and you do all this and the radio show and the TV show and the cruise ships, which I wished I would be on one and get food poisoning, but now they're slowing those down. But stuff like that. The second hardest question, and because you really touch people and churches that don't know how to deal with, your brother died, had HIV, and passed away as a gay person.
He
And I
did.
love how your church, your father's church, which you, in your own words, you said a redneck Southern Baptist church that
Yeah.
beautifully came in around your family and around your brother. And now we have this not struggle where the younger generation, the older Christian generation go, oh, he's gay. It's that's the worst sin in the world. But then you get the younger generation go, well, this is the same as lying and stealing and cheating and stuff. What do you tell a young pastor or a young person or even an older Christian how to deal with that with a gay person? Either, how do you deal with that?
Well, in this day and age, it would sure be easy for anybody to be confused about a lot of things. And so, whatever you do, you really want to go out of your way to love, and not just say it, but really love them and care about them. And then, you still don't ever want to deviate from the standard. That's there's a lot of the Bible that's confusing. I don't think anything about sexuality is confusing in the Bible. It's really clear. And so I love and I accept the person, but I just think that that area is an area that they somehow, whether um, it was some influence or whatever, wherever it came from, I think they need a lot of help, but I don't think it's a hopeless situation.
Now, about young girls who are Christian girls that's always Instagramming themselves and it becomes all about their looks and about their what do you tell them? How do you convince them that this is not reality or this is not life?
Well, I don't think you can convince them, but you just have to, they need models that are far beyond that. That's the true answer.
Right. Last question and I appreciate your time. It's 46 minutes already together. I appreciate it. I wasn't expecting all that, but I'm hoping for an hour because that's the show. The question is, what do you say to people who, like, sometimes I feel personally there's that fear of success. Like whenever I have great opportunities coming and
Yeah.
you start to procrastinating or starting what do you because a lot of comedians are watching right now, and what do you say to that area?
I say succeed anyway. My daughter's, let me go answer the door and I'll come back and I'll give
Eh,
you your full hour. So you have to
of
talk to
course,
yourself for 2
of
seconds.
course,
All right.
of course.
But hold
Yes.
on. I'll be right back.
Yes, take your time. This is our break, ladies and gentlemen. We are talking to Steve Arterburn, who is one of from New Life Live, one of a best-selling author, a wonderful, wonderful man of God, and he's very real. We talked about so many issues today, and I pray that you can, this will be helpful. And also, there's ways that I'm going to ask Steve at the end about how, if you are struggling with these issues from pornography to depression to any other issue, maybe your marriage is abusive, maybe your husband is narcissistic, ever stuff like that, that you would reach out to New Life Live and be able to seek help with that, because that's how it starts. I
Okay.
just get, I just, okay. I reiterate. I was telling people, if you're dealing, you have issues with pornography, with issues in your marriage, if you have problems with depression, that they can go to New Life Live and be able to reach out to you guys and be able to find help. Maybe there's online support group or something. And
Yeah.
there's also on the side, there's counselors who are Christian and approved by New Life Live, that you can actually reach out to them and be able to do that. So
So
back
let
to
me
the
answer your
question of
question.
self.
Well,
Yeah.
so let's just talk about, you said fear of success, right?
Yes.
Well, you know, um, if if you really believe that God isn't just a loving God, but God is love. That's what the Bible says. God is love. I mean, his whole entity is described as love, not just an adjective. God is love. Um, if you really believe that, then and you live into it, then fear is going to be a lot less of a factor in your life. So if my foundation is God loves me, and I'm going to go use my talent some way, and I might succeed if I'm just doing what God wants me to do, and I know that God loves me, I have such less of a chance of being afraid of success. Now, if just that kind of intellectual conceptual shift isn't enough, maybe the fear of success is rooted in something so much deeper than that. I don't deserve success. I
Mm.
was told I would never be successful. I'm living that out or whatever. So again, you do what I do. You search for the truth and you uproot the lie or the or kind of the misperception or whatever it is. And when you start to do that, then you might you might find yourself succeeding and not sabotaging that success. I can't think of anybody that would be less qualified to run a women's movement than me. And yet somehow I got to do that. And if I, just said, oh, I'm not worthy, I'm not going to pursue it, I would have missed such a great blessing. But I just knew God does strange things and works in weird ways. And maybe he would use me because he knew I would never think that women of faith succeeding had anything to do with me and everything to do with him. And I'm just so grateful there wasn't something in me that wouldn't let me try something different or do something that wouldn't be typical. And, starting a women's movement would not be typical for a man. But I don't know. That's what God did. And I'm grateful.
Is there a book or something you recommend that kind of helps a person or an entertainer find out why they're self-sabotaging or why they're not pursuing or you
Yeah, take
know
your life back.
take your what?
Take Your Life Back is the name of the book.
Oh, I think
Because
you tried me. Oh, yeah.
what you end up doing is you end up living a life that's reactive to something versus responding to what God wants for you. So who wants to go through life and you're reactive your whole life? That's a horrible way to live. So you want to be responsive, not reactive, and that's the book that helps you reverse that.
All right, final question. People are asking, okay, we're anxious because of the quarantine. We don't know when the country is going to open. Like, personally, I'm calling every state, like, are you guys open today? Can I come in? Can I do that? But so there's anxiety. And what do you say to people who are anxious? They're not depressed, but they're anxious about not knowing what's the future hold.
Yeah, well, I think it's been an incredibly difficult time, and I think a lot of people have shamed folks into, well, what are you going to do? You're going to have faith, you're going to have fear. Well, if my wife had TB when she was younger, so she ought to be afraid of the virus. I'm in the at risk category. I ought to be a little bit afraid. That'd be foolish not to be a little bit afraid. So maybe you've been shamed into this and now you're wanting to get out and now you don't know. I just think it's natural and you're normal if you're kind of feeling this kind of stuff. So just be sure you're not struggling alone by yourself, not telling anybody what you're really thinking or feeling. That's to me the worst thing is to convince yourself that it's shameful to tell somebody, hey, I'm really having a horrible time.
Right. Now, what are you working on? A new book working on? You're working on a Bible? What are you working on right now?
I've got, well, my wife and I are working on three Bible projects. One is the 1 year Bible for men, the other is the 1 year Bible for women. And then every woman's Bible is a new project we just started working on. The Every Man's Bible is the best selling men's study Bible. And so now they want to create the women's version of that. Then Dave Stoop and I have a new book that will come out in about 6 months. We've just finished called the Soul of a Hero, and it really talks about a guy's desire to be a hero, and the need for us to transcend needing to rescue desperate people, women, to be a hero. That just there's so many books about men and heroism, and it's like it takes a desperate woman to be a hero. That's a horrible thing. So we hope it's a really strong biblical concept of heroism for the man.
So you are the right man to start the Woman of Faith.
Maybe.
How many pages a day do you write when you sit and
Well,
write?
like right now, I write about a minimum of 300 words a day.
Mm,
So that's about 2 pages or so.
that's a good balance. So
Yeah,
in 6 months you can get the book
yeah. Well, no,
about.
we already finished that book. Yeah, but 6 months it'll be out. Yeah.
Where can people get a hold of your ministry and just say, "Hey, I heard something today. I am struggling with that
Yeah.
issue."
One eight
Where should I
hundred
go?
New Life or newlife.com.
One
Either.
eight hundred New Life or newlife.com.
Just so simple.
Perfect, perfect. Well, Steve, thank you so much for being a friend. I know we don't connect much, but I've always looked up like, hey, I know Steve Arterburn. And so thank you for taking the time. And if you
Yeah. Thanks
feel,
for having me on.
Are you kidding me? There's a lot of fans that every night we do a show called Live with Naz, and the whole idea of the show, it's an hour, it's 8:30 Pacific, which is you'll be too late for you guys. But what happened is I'm not the comedian, it's the people who are watching the comedian. So I asked a question like, what's the worst name for a plumber? And people will start for an hour, just put the funniest thing, and then at the end we ask for prayer, and then I encourage them, and I get a lot of people who said this is taking me away from my depression and my anxiety, because now I'm thinking of funny stuff. So it's helping people a little bit. But a lot of the people who are going to watch tonight or watching, they were looking forward for this podcast to hear from you. So thank
Mm.
you so much for your time. Love you, appreciate you, and if you want to share this on any of your social media, that would be great.
By the way, clogged would be I think the worst name for a plumber.
Clogged. Okay. They came up with Farrah Fawcett. So, all right. I love you. Thank you so much
Take care.
and take care. God bless.